Welcome to the Daily Horror Habit Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Krieger, bringing you daily reviews of current and classic horror movies for your twisted pleasure. Be aware that these reviews and discussions may include spoilers, and as always, I hope you enjoy. The style over substance argument is one that I've made an effort to remove from my vocabulary. It's reductive and along the same lines as calling movies mindless dumb fun or guilty pleasure. Own what you like and be accepting of the fact that a movie doesn't necessarily have to have a compelling story to be good. Likewise, it also doesn't need to be overly stylized to be memorable. Accepting that films can succeed at both simultaneously or putting their creative eggs into one basket over the other can still merit a film worth watching. And the German film LUZ is a perfect example of that, albeit a haunting, ambitious tale of atmospheric demonic possession, that is. Currently streaming on Shudder and Tubi TV, written and directed by Tillman Singer, LUZ tells the tale of taxi driver Luz, played by Luana Valise, who is having one hell of an evening. Something is following her, and diving out of her cab and running to a police station hasn't remedied the situation. Rather, it has endangered everyone there. Now, her supernatural past comes back to haunt her as a demonic entity forces her to face her past and to question her future. LUZ is a film that will straight up not click with casual horror fans looking for a quick scare. The film is far more focused on conveying dread and unease through atmosphere rather than spelling out our protagonist's sordid past. The film is largely a homage to 80s Euro horror films by supplying the audience with a hypnotic score from Simon Woskow and arresting imagery framed by cinematographer Paul Foltz. The fragmented approach to the film's narrative is jarring to say the least, as the viewer constantly feels as if they are one step behind the pacing of the film's story. LUZ opens with a long, lingering, grainy shot of the lobby of a police station. Luz walks into the station without speaking to the officer at the desk. She's banged up, bruises visible on her, but she seemingly doesn't care. She walks over to the soda machine, takes one long gulp, and then shuffles back to the desk of the attending officer. When he asks her how he may help, she bellows in an otherworldly voice, "Is this how you want to live your life? Is this seriously what you want?" With this scene, Tillman Singer shows his prowess as a filmmaker by displaying an act as mundane as a girl buying a soda as foreboding. The audience is then transported to a bar where we meet Luz's girlfriend Nora, played by Julia Riedler. Nora is in the midst of seducing bar patron Dr. Rossini, and tells him the story of her and Luz's relationship. But while Nora looks like a normal woman, her seducing Rossini isn't just for his body, but for his mind. This long, initially random seeming scene serves as exposition to describe Luz and her own abilities, setting the supernatural stage of the film. And now for a brief intermission. If you've been enjoying this episode of Daily Horror Habit, please take a moment to subscribe to the show on your preferred streaming platform or leave us a review on iTunes. And thank you for your continued support, and I hope you enjoy the remainder of today's horrifying episode. To be honest, it took me 2 viewings of this roughly 70-minute film to feel as if I had a competent grasp on this ambiguous narrative. The viewer is given the pieces, and it's up to them to connect these highly stylized dots. And while this approach to telling Luz's story will likely be a source of frustration for those not captivated by the film, I found this fragmentation to fuel Luz's disconcerting atmosphere. There's a dreamlike quality to the presentation of every event in the film, and the second half is a perfect example of this. The viewer is transported from the bar back to Luz in the police station, but she is now being hypnotized by Dr. Rossini in hopes of getting her to divulge the events of the evening. The police have set up a makeshift taxi, chairs, and a mirror to help place Luz in the events that occurred earlier in the evening. There's a stage-like quality to how the scene plays out, though the surreal nature of the scene is in the details. While Luz recalls her taxi sitting outside an airport, we hear cars honking and planes flying overhead. We hear the sound of her lighting a cigarette, and she raises her empty hand to her mouth to take a drag. A minute later, a lit cigarette appears in her hand. The surreal contrast of her memory of past events and presently being interrogated in the police station, and seeing these two events cross over to one another, makes such a simple scene all the more engaging. This dreamlike presentation carries over into the more supernatural moments that unfold, such as the police station filling with fog, seemingly isolating Luz, the doctor, and the 2 police officers with them from the rest of the station. people from LUZ's past appear to manipulate her, while the demonic entity possessing a human host prepares a ritual from her past. I wouldn't say that LUZ is constructed in the traditional scare-centric nature of possession films. Rather, this is a possession romance that has a few instances of disturbing imagery. But it is far more concerned with the surreal presentation of its narrative rather than actively trying to scare audiences. And to be honest, I found the films focusing on making the viewer uncomfortable far more effective than just another run-of-the-mill demonic possession story. LUZ is an example of a film that, while light on dialogue or actual plot, it more than makes up for it with captivating presentation. We have a fairly basic story that is told in a manner that is unlike most other possession tales. However, there are without a doubt moments that are confusing or too ambiguous for their own good, but as a whole, you will remember how LUZ made you feel more than anything. And that is the sign of an affecting, up-and-coming filmmaker. So, if you're looking for an off-the-beaten-path and straight-up weird, but satisfying sensory-filled journey, check out LUZ while it's streaming on Shudder and Tubi TV. And that'll do it for another episode of Daily Horror Habit, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for another Daily Horror Movie Review. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to Daily Horror Habit on your preferred streaming service, and follow the show on Instagram at Daily Horror Habit and on Twitter at Daily Horror Pod for episode updates. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.